Welcome, Suzanne and Evan. I'm here today with them where they're going to talk about how they pivoted their businesses to two businesses, really, as the coronavirus episode unfolded. So welcome, Evan and Suzanne, and I'll let you guys just go ahead and give a brief introduction about who you are and what you've each been doing that's led up to this point.
Sure. I'll start. I'm Suzanne Henriksen. I'm the founder of the Crafty Cask, which is a company that's all about celebrating and supporting craft alcohol makers, and also educating and entertaining craft alcohol enthusiasts and kind of trying to bring them together to grow craft alcohol and help craft alcohol makers be successful. And so I do that a few different ways. For consumers, I create lots of kind of engaging articles and videos and all sorts of fun stuff to teach them about craft alcohol and introduce them to makers. I also do meet the maker events where I'm actually bringing consumers together in person, getting to kind of, rub elbows and get to know each other. And then I do marketing consulting, and I have a whole online craft alcohol marketing boot camp to help teach craft makers marketing based on my 12 years of corporate America kind of marketing experience. And that was really kind of the genesis of all this, was to help them take their passion for making those delicious craft beers and craft spirits and craft wines and ciders that we all love, but helping them really be better marketers on a budget so that they can really be successful.
And I'm Evan Rothrock. I'm a certified sommelier and cider professional. After leaving the restaurant world, I came out to California to do wine tours and host custom bespoke wine tours that are focused on education and also on small boutique wineries and producers, showing people that are familiar with the big brands in the store that there's another side to the wine production, both here in California and all over the world. And it's been a really rewarding experience helping to helping to support these small producers and show people what they can provide and offer.
That is so cool. And I'm excited to be here with you because, as I told you before we started recording, it brings the best of the worlds for me together because I love craft beer and I love wine. So it's exciting to talk about. And I'm in Nebraska, and we've seen the number of small breweries brewing their own craft beers just increasingly grow over the last 5 to 7 years. So I imagine is that part of the reason why you tapped into that market?
Yeah, I think craft has been, especially in the beer world, has been a big trend for a pretty long time. In wine as well, the boutique wineries have definitely been kind of a big thing for a long time. And more recently, craft distilling and craft cider has really exploded. And I would say those are the two that are a little bit newer to the scene in their kind of huge growth rates. And so, it just seemed like there were a lot of people out there kind of taking the leap, and especially in this industry, a lot of times this isn't their first career. Typically, they don't kind of get out of college and say, I'm going to start a craft distillery. Usually they kind of make their living and make their money somewhere else, and then they take a really big leap of faith and to follow their passion and follow their dreams to build this craft brewery, distillery, often with zero kind of background or understanding. And so I just love that. It's my personal spirit as well. Evan always teases me that I tend to take leaps and figure out what I'm going to do before I land rather than planning before that. So I kind of wanted to support and reward that spirit and help them not just succeed, but thrive, and help them kind of figure out over the years, especially in beer, it started to seem like they felt like the only path to try to get some big name, big booze brand to buy them. And while that's a totally viable path, if that's what you do, I think there's a lot of people who get into this because they want to start a family business that they can pass down to their children and be in the family forever. And it just didn't seem viable for a lot of them. They couldn't figure out how to make enough money to kind of do that. And so then they were forced to try to chase getting bought. And so I wanted to help. I wanted to help these small makers figure out marketing and be successful. And Evan's supporting them by bringing them guests and introducing people to them who wouldn't find them otherwise. So it's kind of a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And tell me a little bit more, Evan, about when you take someone on a tour through wine country, through these distilleries. Tell us a little bit more about what that experience is like.
So as much as possible, we have tried to customize the itinerary that we plan based on the preferences that the people have on any given day. So finding out a little bit about what they tend to drink at home, what sort of things about visiting wine country sound appealing to them, from the experiential side of things. And then most of them are, I would say, relative novices with regard to wine knowledge. They might drink wine and enjoy wine quite a bit, but don't know a lot of the details and intricacies of how it's made and why it tastes the way it does and things like that. And so given that we, kind of advertise and tout ourselves as an educational type of experience, we definitely get a lot of people that are interested in learning. And it's been really rewarding over the years, meeting people that, show up on the tour and they're like, I like red wine. And then they come back a year later or 2 years later and they're totally into it. And, I always, kind of am flattered, I guess, in some way that I imagine in no small part their newfound appreciation and deeper appreciation of wine is due to the fact that I got to kind of show them around and spark that.
Yeah, you sparked that excitement, passion, and learning. That's so cool.
Yeah,
So,
it's fun. Evan's a sommelier, and he's, and so he did that for a really long time, but he's really good at like breaking it down into layman's terms, which is awesome for, his day-to-day job.
Sure.
That he can kind of make something that oftentimes in restaurants, if you're talking to a somm, it feels, he's really like, that's one of the reasons he left the restaurant world, is because he wanted to have more of that personal connection to make things more accessible.
Yeah.
Which is really awesome.
Yeah, wine can be really intimidating, and so finding a way to make it accessible is certainly something that I personally strive for.
And he's now doing that in cider too, because he just took his, he's a certified cider professional now as well, which is awesome. So getting to do that in the cider world as well.
I can just see the energy between the both of you about the excitement about these worlds, and I think it's being entrepreneurs in your area of expertise and passion and doing what you love is just about the best of the world that you could
Totally. We get to work with other people who are doing that exact same thing day in and day out, which is really energizing for us as well.
For sure.
So life was going well for you guys up until a couple weeks ago when COVID-19, we learned all these new words like social distancing, COVID-19, quarantine, that word not part of our vocabulary. So how did that unfold for you just tell me a little bit about how it unfolded.
Well, for me, the last couple of tours I did, people knew about it at that point, and we're still kind of, I guess, taking the risk. They had already bought their plane ticket. Airlines weren't readily refunding or canceling things, and so they were like, well, I guess we'll still come out there. And the wineries were ghost towns. There was really nobody out there on the road, and everybody behind the bar at the wineries pouring the wine was like, oh, you're the first people we've seen all day. And so it was really kind of an eerie experience for me. And then they stopped completely, and then the requests for refunds for cancellation started rolling in, and that kind of started racking up, and we just realized that this is going to be the situation that we're living in for a while, it seems like. And I sat at home reading articles about the unfolding situation and doing projections based on the numbers that we were seeing. And
he's a little bit of a math nerd too. He was doing his own charts and graphs here.
Yeah,
trying to figure this out.
Kind of got a grasp on it, and then I was like, well, I need to stop paying so close attention to this, because it's kind of like,
feels heavy, right? And a little bit overwhelming if we pay too much attention.
Yeah, and especially I think, for me, it's similarly like I was seeing what was happening with Evan's business, but then I was also seeing all of this news about, mandating breweries and bars to close was one of the first kind of big deal mandates that happened here in San Francisco, at least.
Yeah, California.
And in California, it was kind of like, no more breweries, no more distilleries, no more wineries. All of you are mandated to close. You're non-essential. That was one of the earliest like kind of industry-wide things that I remember. Because I think that was even before restaurants and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was immediately just like, oh no, like all of my clients were just basically told to like close their doors with no.
Stop selling your product.
Yeah.
Devastating overnight. One day things are great.
Yeah.
Switch and overnight
And you know, for some craft makers, they have distribution and they sell online, and a lot of their stuff is, you know, out there. But even if that's the case, it's being sold through restaurants and bars and
the tasting
retail.
rooms. Yeah.
And so even those sales were very quickly getting impacted. And so it really, like for me, I mean, I had, you know, a couple of clients call me and they were like, Suzanne, we're really sorry. Like, we know we're in a contract, but like, we're going to have to take this month by month. We have no idea if we're going to make any money next month. And so we have to pause on the marketing newsletter we're doing. We have to pause on, you know, and so it very quickly became real for both of us, where for a little while you're watching this kind of from afar. And then all of a sudden we were, after a couple of days of being at home together, we were just like, so now what? Like,
what was the emotion like that you guys were experiencing as you really it sunk in that this was like happening?
I mean, it's definitely kind of denial at first. It was a little bit of like, okay, this will be like a week or two. All right. But very quickly, I think, especially as you started doing your charts and math and, you know, doing his own Evan verified projections, I feel like we started to take it pretty seriously, probably faster than some of our other people that we know, just because.
Yeah, I didn't lie. It showed something was happening.
Yeah, I was definitely anxious because, you know, as it was just showing up here in the US, my sister lives in Vietnam. And so we were actually over there visiting her
right before this happened,
over the New Year's. And so as we were transiting home through Hong Kong,
we were starting to hear about this.
It was right when that was beginning to leave Wuhan and start to spread into China. And so we were, I guess, more cognizant of it and relatively aware of the severity that was going on there.
I mean, we actually got masks, and while we were in the Hong Kong airport, wore masks the entire time we were in the Hong Kong airport.
And most people were.
Because we had heard enough about it while we were in Asia that we were like, this seems
so you guys were almost ahead of the curve then on knowledge of knowing what could potentially be coming.
Yeah, I don't think we had any idea that it would come over here and affect the whole world the way it did, but we saw what was going on in Asia and it felt scary over there.
Yeah. You know, as I kind of started to realize what I realized, it was definitely a lot of feelings of insecurity and you know, kind of just pensive tension about all the what ifs that were floating around out there.
Yeah. Well, and especially, I mean, we live in one of the most expensive cities in the world, and we have a mortgage. You know, like
and one of the most densely populated cities in the country.
Right.
There's, you know, people living so close together, and if it's something that's easily transmitted, what's that going to cause and be a result of for us? So we practiced
uncertainty.
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, a lot of just like lack of control too, which for me, like if I can control things, I'm good, you know. And so this was very
a lot of the rest of the world.
So there was definitely some like real fear there, which in today's day and age, I don't know, it's not an emotion I feel very often, that I'm like actually fearful of what's going to happen and having this really big unknown. It felt unreal. It still does. It still feels like we're living in kind of one of those sci-fi kind of Contagion movies, you know, and we're just like, wait, what? This is real? This is happening?
The only I imagine it might be similar to for people was, you know, like the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's just like every day, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
It could be the end of the world.
Something that in our generations we just can't really relate to. We have no really experience to compare it to. So as you guys had this knowledge setting in that this was going to be a long-term thing, wasn't going to be overnight, when did you decide to start pivoting in this new direction that we're going to talk about? And how were those ideas inspired?
Probably about a month ago, maybe a little bit more from today, roughly.
And honestly, I was we were lying in bed and I was scrolling through Flipboard and reading article after article about
Virtual
winery
tastings,
A,
happy
winery B,
hours.
holding a virtual happy hour, holding a virtual tasting. And everything I was reading was just, it became very apparent to me. And so it was one of those moments where like, I ended up getting up out of bed and staying up till 3 a.m, kind of mapping things out, because I was like, gosh, all of these craft makers that we love and support and our clients, they're all scrambling right now to figure out how to do this virtual thing, whatever it is, whether it's a happy hour or a tasting, like they're trying to figure out like, how do we bring our business virtually and try to do something there that can help us. And it just felt really inefficient to me as a business person and a marketer. I was like having thousands of people trying to figure out how to do a virtual tasting and a virtual happy hour well, because just doing one isn't enough. And it felt like, you know, between my skill set of doing videos and doing video production and video editing,
and the Meet the Maker events,
my Meet the Maker events, right?
So are pretty akin to what we do.
Yeah, and then his expertise of, you know, being a somm, being a cider professional, having those tasting techniques and being able to teach people like the ins and outs of that, it felt like we had the skills to maybe offer up to our craft maker friends and help them. And then we kind of, you know, started to like, well, but why would do it with us? Why not just do it themselves? Maybe we should just teach them how to do it. And then we really came up with this idea that, you know, the Crafty Cask has an audience of over 15,000 people on social media. All of these makers individually typically have some sizable audience, maybe only a few thousand, and if they're constantly trying to do a virtual tasting or a virtual happy hour for their own audience, that's not super sustainable. You know, they're not going to keep coming to 1 million all the time, and they're not going to keep buying from you every 2 minutes because you need support. And so we kind of thought, gosh, if we feature a couple of makers, 2 or 3 makers at each virtual tasting, and then we're promoting it, both of the makers are promoting it, now all of a sudden we're expanding our pool of consumers to just people who are enthusiastic about that style of alcohol or theme. And we can drive pre-orders for sales. We can drive sales during it, you know, and so
mailing list signups,
brand awareness.
Yeah.
Right. And so it just started to kind of feel like there was some real value here. And while we actually have a tutorial where we teach makers how to do virtual tastings well themselves, because we think there's still real value in them doing it themselves as well. We just felt like this could really help them drive online sales in a time that they needed it, and maybe help make us a little bit of money along the way. And so that's kind of where the idea came from.
I love what I heard from you in there is you had this vision to be the connector for all of these different distilleries, the wineries, the people that you were already connected with. You've built this audience. They each have their own audience, but now you're able to connect all of these people in a way that nobody would have probably considered connecting 2 months ago.
Right.
But yet each one now has the opportunity to expand and grow their audience because of the situation. So
Totally.
So powerful.
Yeah, it's kind of the whole idea of like rising tide lifts all boats, you know, and it's like if we can just all hang out and be cool and talk booze and get people excited about the different things and support each other, we're all going to benefit from that.
Yeah, you know, Robert Mondavi is kind of the forefather of Napa Valley, was a brilliant marketer, and his whole vision when he started his winery wasn't to promote his winery, it was to promote Napa Valley, because he knew that his winery wasn't going to be successful unless people thought highly of Napa Valley. And you know, it worked wonders, obviously, for Napa. Yeah. And it's a really it's a really powerful approach to building community and creating support,
which is something we all really need right now, is community and connection and distraction, honestly, and booze. Let's be honest, we all need a little bit of booze right now.
Just checking off the boxes there.
So, and the cool thing is, because even the people who may not have the means to be buying a lot right now, I think we have a whole spectrum of people who still can and some who still are able to. But that's going to shift at some point in time. That audience is going to have purchasing power again in the future.
Yeah.
Now they're connected in to new people, new places that they're going to be interested in spending their money.
And and that's one of the reasons too, while like we definitely feel like it's a much more immersive experience if you pre-order exactly what we'll be drinking and drink along with us. It's absolutely not required, because we're just kind of like, hey, just open up whatever you have on hand at home, or don't drink at all. That's fine too. And just join us for some, like, how often do you get to of Bear Republic Brewing Company, or, you know, these bigger name brands that are still craft, or like this winery that you visited 2 years ago that you love, like now you get to meet the winemaker virtually and ask him questions, and kind of like, it's just a cool experience. And you're right, like if you didn't pre-order to drink along with us, and if during the event you weren't inspired to go make a purchase right then and there, down the road when you're looking to buy wine and you're in the store and you see that brand, you're going to have a different connection. And now you are going to choose that over another brand. And it's because you attended the virtual experience. So there's a long-term value for the brands that's not just about driving sales immediately today, even though, of course, they all need that support today.
And we hope that there's a long-term value and viability for what we're doing, because I feel like this, you know, circumstance that we're in right now with coronavirus is going to change the perspective and the way we live life, you know, in some ways permanently. I saw a meme very early on that I kind of chuckled at, but it, you know, rang very true. Is I just said, I guess we're going to find out how many of those meetings really could have just been emails.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
you know, the transition that we're seeing with telehealth, and how doctors are being able to connect with their patients virtually, and therapists, and all these industries that have been kind of resistant to technology in some ways, and really, you know, seeing the benefit and the value in it. And so hopefully this is something that we can
published an article yesterday about that talked about all of the things that the rules and things that we thought were like these sacred ways of doing things have just overnight stripped away the things that weren't essential. And it just, even like school, you know, we held this value that kids have to be educated in a brick and mortar classroom, and overnight that's stripped away. And how will those things permanently influence the outcome, and for the better? I mean, what things are we going to let go of that really weren't serving us, and shift into this really virtual technology world that we live in? So it's kind of exciting to me to see what will come.
Kind of joking too that we feel like we're seeing our friends more than we would normally see them right now. And it's kind of a funny thing. We're like, man, you know, we would go months at a time sometimes without seeing certain friends, because it was just like, we didn't feel like going out, we were busy, lives, whatever. But like, we're just like sitting on the couch in our PJs at home and like throwing up a Zoom call and like hanging out with friends. And it's a really cool thing to see that, you know, we used to all think by scrolling each other's Facebook feeds, we were like connected and caught up, but it's like, it's so much better to just get on a video call and like hang out for a while casually. And you don't have to, like, you can be cooking dinner while you're doing it. You can be living your life.
Right.
So it's like those types of things that feel promising and feel like, gosh, I hope that sticks around after this, and people keep, you know, connecting virtually in a more meaningful way. And we don't just kind of go back to our siloed, looking at our own screens, typing on a computer life again.
Right. So tell me, if someone wants to take a virtual tasting experience with you, one, how do they do that? What can they expect? And how do they find you to get started doing it?
Yeah, so the easiest way is probably just to go to thecraftycask.com, and right under events, there's a virtual tasting button right there, and it has a whole page that kind of explains what the virtual tastings are about, and it has our calendar of events up there as well. And yeah, I mean, in terms of what to expect,
you basically can expect a kind of a brief overview of whatever the particular type of alcohol that we're going to be talking about, or types of alcohol. A little bit about their history, production techniques and styles, and then you know, letting everybody kind of chat about what they're drinking at home, introduce themselves, you know, share any kind of fun anecdotes about maybe the specific products that we're going to be focused on that day, and then an introduction of, you know, any representative from the particular brands that we're going to be producing, and giving them some time to talk about their philosophy and their goals and their products and their property and anything about their brand that they want to share. And then, more direct focus on the specific product that we're featuring. And then an opportunity, again, for the audience to kind of chime in and talk with the producer if they are so inclined, which is, one of the fun things about this. And then a shift to the other producer and their products with a kind of a similar background and setup. During the experience, we like to kind of show pictures of their property, their production room, their tasting room, their team, all
Videos
those.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Try to make it immersive. Yeah.
A little bit of the location virtually.
Yeah, we're really trying to make it, because there are a lot of virtual happy hours and tastings out there right now. And so, some of our differentiators, I think, are we really do try to make it an immersive experience. We're showing pictures and videos while the makers are talking. So you're not just staring at people's faces, but you get to kind of feel like you're there and you're seeing their production process and you're on property. And then we do a lot of, getting people to kind of do the same thing up to the camera. So like everyone swirl their glass at the camera so we can see it, the color of everyone's thing. And and so that makes it kind of engaging. We have downloadable tasting mats where people can kind of chart what they're tasting along with while Evan's kind of explaining tasting techniques. And so we we really try our hardest. It gets hard sometimes with bigger groups, but we try our hardest to get people off of mute and actually talking. So a lot of times, they'll do the raise their hand thing on Zoom and they'll type a question in and we'll kind of say, we can read your question for you, but do you want to just unmute yourself and talk? And so we really try to make it less of a one directional thing.
Yeah.
And get
Conversation.
Yeah. As much as it
absolutely.
can be conversational instead of like a lecture, doing what we can to encourage that and promote that.
Yeah, absolutely.
How fun. So is there a cost, or what is the cost to attend one of your virtual tastings?
It's free to consumers. We're really trying to keep it that way as well. Right now, as we've started these off, they're actually free to producers as well. We're just trying to get the wheels running and figure out what the value proposition is. But we're seeing really good results. We're seeing about 60% of our attendees are going to the online order pages of makers. And then about 25% of them are actually buying something from the makers.
Awesome.
That was actually for events that we weren't promoting early enough in advance for them to pre-order. So now that we're promoting early enough in advance for people to pre-order, we're expecting all those results to go up. And so as that kind of starts to prove itself out with a few more events, I think the way we're going to do this is we'll charge makers a small fee. We're going to keep it really low as we can now, just to cover our costs.
Either a flat fee or maybe a percentage of sales
or something.
We'll figure that out.
But we'd really like to keep them free for consumers so that it's just engaging and fun. And because honestly, we would rather that the consumers spend their money buying the alcohol from the makers than paying us to do this. So we're, like we tend to do, we just jumped in and we were like, let's just do it for free and we'll worry about how to make the money later, even though we need to figure out how to make money soon.
Right. And I love your spirit of service and being willing to do that and recognizing that, hey, we can do this and we're willing to do it as a service to show the value. And then people are willing to spend their money when they see that.
Absolutely.
Value. Well, I know you have a little tour for us that I'm excited to see what our own little virtual tour is of those bottles behind you. So tell us.
Yeah, so this week coming up, so Thursday the 9th, so we have a really fun one. We're calling it Craft Beer Distilled into Craft Whiskey. And so this is a really fun, hot trend because it's basically all whiskey is made from beer, but it's usually unfinished beer that you wouldn't really want to drink. It's not hopped, it's not aged, it's none of those fun things, but there's a really hot trend that they're taking finished craft beer. So this is Racer 5 beer from Bear Republic and distilling that finished beer into whiskey. So this is R5 whiskey that's made from Racer 5 beer. So we have both of those makers on this week. And so we'll be talking all about that. And then the following week, we have a Pet Nat cider tasting. So these are two different ciders from Eden in Vermont and from Botanist and Barrel in North Carolina. And so they both do a beautiful Pet Nat kind of version of cider, which is
so it's kind of a term for sparkling wine that's made in a very old technique and tradition.
And then we'll also be trying some of their other ciders as well. They have a beautiful ice cider, which is really rare and fun. And then after that, we have spirits. So we have gin and barrel-aged gin, and we're going to be pairing them up with these beautiful Simple Goodness Sister syrups. So these are actually non-alcoholic, and it's like this one's like rhubarb vanilla bean syrup. So they're really fun flavors. They're these two sisters. One of them is the farmer and does all the farming, and the other one makes these beautiful syrups for cocktails and things of that nature.
She runs a mobile bottling, or I'm sorry, a mobile cocktail bar out of like an old camper trailer.
Yeah. So fun stories, and that we're all about the stories. We're all about sharing like the story and behind the people and all of that. So, you know, these never feel like sales pitches. That's one of my big passions, is like, we are not selling here. Yes, we would love for you to buy if you're excited and inspired, but we're not selling to you. We're telling you the stories. We're giving you a peek behind the scenes. We're introducing you to unique, fun products and trends.
The stories are the connective tissue that, you know, everyone strives for. And I've definitely recognized that from my years before I started doing tours in the restaurant world. You could talk until you're blue in the face about how a specific Pinot Noir was going to go great with that duck dish. But if you could tell them a story about the name of the wine, or like about the producer and how he became inspired to make Pinot Noir, that's what people gravitate towards. And that's what causes them to want to have that experience and connect with that story.
And that's the thing they're going to remember and tell their friends. Like, they're not going to remember the technical details of the product. They're going to be like, oh my God, there's this maker who did this thing, right? Like, that's what, that's storytelling has been a part of our culture and civilization since the beginning of time, you know? And so that's what these are all about, are sharing stories from the consumers and from the makers and introducing them. We of course have lots of wine ones coming up too. Our next 3 aren't wine, so we didn't talk about that, but we have lots and lots of wine coming up as well. So we're excited. And you can see, like I said, the whole calendar of events is at thecraftycask.com on the events page or on the virtual tasting page. And you can register there for free as well. So it's a Zoom registration. And once you register for one, they're every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific time right now. And so once you register for one, you have them all on your calendar. So you can just come to whichever ones you want. You don't have to register each week. It's really just—
I'm going to go register. I'm excited to get it.
Actually, next week's is at 5 p.m.
Oh, that's right.
Just because they're both East Coast, and we didn't want them to have to stay up
super late. And
but
most of them are 6 p.m.
I'm excited to register.
Yeah, we'd love to see you at one.
That'll be fun.
And I have a few people I know who are fanatics that will also be interested in participating.
Yeah,
so
cool.
We'll get your story out here a little bit more. Cool. So a couple final questions for you. If you're talking to other entrepreneurs right now, and what would you say to them about keeping their chin up, keeping inspired, keeping their eye on what comes next versus getting kind of bogged down in what's happening around us?
Yeah, I mean, first I would say it's hard to do, right? So cut yourself some slack if you're having a hard time doing that, because it's hard to do. It's hard to, like, especially when you've been building something already and all of a sudden it kind of comes to a screeching halt and you feel like you're at square one again. So it's hard. So I think we all need to be kind to ourselves and, you know, be patient. If an immediate idea isn't coming up for how to figure this out, like, that's okay. And the less pressure we put on ourselves, the better. But then I would just remind all of us, especially entrepreneurs, that out of crisis often comes the best innovation and the best opportunities. And that doesn't mean opportunities in a slimy kind of way where you're trying to take advantage of a situation, but it means real opportunities that are like, wow, I would have never thought of this otherwise. I mean, I don't know that we would have thought to do this, and I don't know that makers would have thought that it was a good idea, but I really do think this could be something that withstands the test of time if we do it right. And so, I would just encourage you to put your creative kind of thinking hat on and adapt and pivot and flex, and don't be stuck to your original vision necessarily. Start to figure out what those different branches are that you might have never thought of. They might be a little bit out of your comfort zone, but they could be pretty exciting too.
And to kind of echo that in a different light, the advice to pivot and adapt and flex seems like it can be a challenge in and of itself, because, like, you know, there's no path to do that. And so to go back to what Suzanne was saying and cutting yourself some slack, practice some self-care, you know?
Yeah.
Get out and get into the sunshine. Don't get too close to people. Exercise, get enough rest.
Yeah.
Eat well, because all of those things are going to contribute to having the mindset shift that allows you to see that opportunity and, you know, flesh out the vision of how you can flex and pivot and shift.
And I think something that's so important right now is brainstorming with other entrepreneurs, because
Great point.
sometimes someone else can see something really, an opportunity really clearly that we can't see because we're so fixed on looking at the trees around us. So I just would encourage entrepreneurs to reach out and find someone to brainstorm with.
Yeah, I mean, that was really beneficial for us just to have each other to do this, because there were definitely moments when we were working on this idea and realizing how much work it was going to be, that I was seeing lots of articles come in about other people doing virtual. And I was just like, people have already done this idea. Forget it. We're too late. Forget it. And he would like brainstorm, like, wait a minute though, the way we're doing it is different. The way we're doing, you know, and so it is helpful to have someone push back on you a little bit and say, wait a minute, there might be a different way to think about that. You know, and that's where all these millions of Facebook groups we've all joined over the years that we all kind of ignore half the time, because who has time for that? This is a great time to get into them and actually start responding to people and asking questions and being a more active member of those entrepreneur groups and all those groups as well.
Which is where we connected, within an entrepreneur Facebook group. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. And we actually, so I actually on the Crafty Cask, as part of our craft alcohol marketing bootcamp, we have a craft maker marketing group that's all about just marketing talk, and it's just craft alcohol makers, you know. And so that's a great space for while you're spinning and you're trying to figure things out, to just like start conversations, and it can be casual, and but sometimes you learn something that then can bring you to the next level, you know. So it's yeah, those are helpful.
well, and it's one of the reasons that I decided to do this interview series, because I wanted to put out their ideas of how people were following through that process and were brainstorming, so that in hopes that someone else might watch that video and say, oh my gosh, okay, I could do the same thing.
Yeah.
I could come up with an idea. So
Yeah, for sure.
once again, how can people reach you? Instagram, Facebook?
Yeah, we're our handle is at the Crafty Cask on everything, so you can find us at the Crafty Cask. On YouTube, it's at the Crafty Cask channel, and we actually do have a tape of one of our previous virtual tastings up on there. So if people are curious about what to expect, they can kind of feed for. It's a cider one. We'll be putting more of those up as well. And thecraftycask.com is the website. That's where all the virtual tasting information is,
Calendar.
to register, the Zoom, the calendar, all that good stuff. And then you can always reach either one of us at Suzanne at thecraftycask.com or Evan at thecraftycask.com as well.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Any parting words that you'd like to share?
Your slogan.
Drink craft, drink the world. Yeah, that's our mission, is to get more people to drink craft and explore the world through craft alcohol, for sure.
Sounds awesome. Okay. Thank you guys very much for being here.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, it was great to be here with Suzanne and Evan today and hear their story of how they've brought their businesses, their unique passions together, and have this spirit of service in serving others, figuring out how can we serve and connect people right now. And, you know, they acknowledge they need to make money. They acknowledge the people, the wine owners, the distilleries need to make money, but they also are doing this free of charge right now so that they can connect people as a service, because we're all in this similar situation together of trying to figure out how it unfolds. So thank you for being here and sharing this journey with me and the story of Evan and Suzanne and how they've pivoted their business. I encourage you to go to the Crafty Cask and sign up for one of their virtual tastings like I'm going to do. Maybe I'll see you there. And just as a parting note, I'm life and business coach Vicki Haddock with Transcending Limits. You can find me at www.tslimits.com and on YouTube at Transcending Limits, and Instagram the same, and Facebook the same. So thank you for being here today. My passion is uplifting and inspiring other people to really claim their authentic vision and passion in life, and go for it and keep going for it. So thank you. Have a great day, and we'll see you on another video.